Hey everybody, Dan Lobby here with Mary Kay Cabot, Scott Patsko, Ellis Williams, all in different locations, but we're going to bring you some Browns videos here. And today we're going to talk about our favorite free agent signing. The Browns have pretty much wrapped up the bulk of free agency. There could still be some stragglers here, but it's time to look at this first wave and pick out our favorite signing. So Mary Kay, let's start with you, your favorite Browns signing so far.
Well, I'm going to go with the obvious and talk about Jack Conklin, the right tackle. They set out to get him in free agency. He was a huge priority for them, and they landed the big fish that they really wanted. They had a big priority to upgrade this offensive line in the offseason, and they've got one huge piece now in Jack Conklin, and I think it's a key signing. And I really think now that they will add their left tackle probably at number 10 overall in the draft, and they should be pretty well set for protecting Baker Mayfield this year.
Yeah, and Ellis, I know you've watched a lot of Jack Conklin and done a post on kind of how he fits. So, I mean, this was really a match, not just because he's a right tackle, but because of how he plays as well.
Yeah, it's crazy. A lot of this just comes down to timing and luck. Jack Conklin tore his ACL a couple of years ago, which then made the Titans contemplate if they were going to pick up his fifth-year option or not, and they decided not to. And then he goes out and performs like one of the best wide zone blocking right tackles in the NFL, if not the best right tackle zone blocking lineman. So then the Browns are in a position with hiring Kevin Stefanski, who wants to run wide zone, and Conklin's on the market, and the two matches make perfect sense. And like you said, watching Conklin, he gets out, he's a complete bulldozer on the outside. The Browns did a good job running behind their tackles last year, but they could not get on the perimeter. Conklin's going to take care of that on the right side. And like Mary Kay said, assuming something happens at 10 with the left tackle, this team's going to be able to run wide left or right at their will.
And Scott, I think the patchwork days since Mitchell Schwartz left of Austin Pastor and Sean Coleman, Chris Hubbard for a couple of years, I think those patchwork days are sort of behind the Browns now.
Yeah, for the first time in a long time, they're not hoping that the guy can do it. They have a guy in Conklin that they've seen play at a high level for someone else for an extended period of time. So that seems to be taken care of. Plus, you restructure Chris Hubbard's contract, so now you have depth there. And I know Hubbard didn't have the great two-year run, the greatest two-year run with the Browns here, but adding him behind Conklin, I think there's some value in that.
Okay, Scott, we'll stick with you. Your favorite signing?
Going along the lines similar to Mary Kay, and I'm going to go with an obvious one, Austin Hooper. I think after the Browns moved on from Demetrius Harris, he had an obvious need for a tight end, knowing that Kevin Stefanski likes to use multiple tight ends a lot. So you bring in Hooper, who was pretty much the big fish out there, kind of like Conklin, that they had to get, and they went and got someone who maybe isn't a better blocker than Njoku. Not that Njoku's great at blocking. We've seen him struggle in that. But they got someone who you could say is even maybe in some regards a better receiver. So they got two guys who I think are going to give Baker Mayfield excellent targets on the field. Now, how that works out in blocking, they'll have to figure that out as they go. But I think Hooper's an excellent signing, and it's the one that I think just you take care of a lot of different things all at once with him.
Yeah, Mary Kay, much like Conklin, like Scott said, this was sort of the big fish. His name was starting to get tied to the Browns early on, and they went out and they delivered on it.
Yeah, you know what? And I think that speaks well to the program right now that they're able to go out there and land two of the biggest names in free agency and the best at their position. I think when you look at Hooper, I don't think they were hoping that he was going to come in here and be the next Rob Gronkowski, but they do expect him to be very solid as a receiver. He had a breakout season last year, and I really think that they will have some combination of Austin Hooper, David Njoku, and they still like Steven Carlson. So don't rule his name out either.
And Ellis, fit. That's kind of the theme of this offseason, and Hooper, he's right there.
Yeah, just like Conklin, Stefanski wasn't going to be able to run the offense he wanted to without Hooper or a tight end capable of doing so. With the draft class looking weaker at tight end, really Hooper was their only option. And what stands out about Hooper is he plays well without the football. It's a term I heard and I've really fallen in love with. He gets, meaning you hear that term in basketball a lot, thinking, someone sets good screens or can get open without the ball. Hooper's like that on the football field. He's going to get other guys open, especially when teams are running zone coverage. And then when they are in those zones, he can find his spot. And one more thing on Hooper in that contract, like Mary Kay said, they don't expect him to play like Rob Gronkowski, and he won't. But when these other tight ends like George Kittle and Travis Kelce become available, Browns fans are going to be looking at that $11 million a year mark, and it's probably going to look like a little bit of a bargain when Kelsey and Ertz and Kittle come in at like 14 and 15 million. So it sounds big now, but just because of the market, I think it's going to make a lot of sense down the road.
All right, Ellis, who do you have for us?
Yeah, sticking with the offensive trend, before I do that, I want to say Andrew Billings is an interesting guy the Browns brought in who is going to challenge for a starting spot and falls into the role playing of that defense. But for me, it's Case Keenum. The Browns made a safe and calculated decision in signing Case Keenum. They could have went out and got Jameis Winston or Marcus Mariota, and you could have seen a world where one of those two guys plays well in the preseason and the Browns can flip him for a pick, and it looks genius. But the mature thing to do is bring in Keenum, who knows his role and is ready to sit behind Baker Mayfield, despite being ready, as he said, to take that chance if he gets it. But he knows his role. He's going to play it. So for me, it's Case Keenum because of how much sense it makes falling in line with Hooper and Conklin.
Yeah, Mary Kay, if you would have sat down and drawn up the perfect backup for Baker Mayfield in this third year, you're trying to develop him, put somebody behind him who can support him, but also come in and play if he needs to. And Case Keenum kind of checks all those boxes.
He really does. I mean, you guys know that I've been banging the Case Keenum drum for a long, long time, talking about him being the ideal backup for Baker Mayfield for so many reasons. And now that they have this coronavirus impacted offseason, I think it's even more imperative to have someone like Case Keenum around who can help implement Kevin Stefanski's offense. He speaks the same language as Kevin Stefanski. And not only that, he knows the Gary Kubiak offense inside and out, and that is basically the offense that the Browns will be running this year. So when it comes time, when they finally do get back together at some point, he will be like another coach, even though he says he doesn't want to coach. He'll be like another coach that in the meeting room, on the field, and everywhere else, he can say, this is how it's done.
And Scott, the bottom line here is Baker Mayfield has been very durable so far in his young career, but if something were to happen, the Browns now have a guy that can come in and play if they need him to, and they can still win some football games.
Yeah, the odds, I don't know how long they're going to stay in Baker's favor for being a healthy Cleveland Browns quarterback. We don't see that very often here. But you're right. I think last year we spent all that time writing and talking, can Drew Stanton win games for the Browns? We know Case Keenum can do that. We've seen him do it at a high level. We've seen him start within the last couple of years. We saw him get the Vikings to the NFC Championship game. So I think, there isn't any question that Keenum can come and get the job done. And that, having that in your back pocket, I think just makes Stefanski that much more comfortable in his first year.
All right, I'm going to pick a recent signing. I like the Billings signing that you brought up, Ellis, but I'm going to pick a recent signing for the Browns. I'm going to say Adrian Claiborne, recently added. He's going to be a defensive end. He's going to give you depth at a position where you needed depth. He gives you some options on that side of the line. His sack numbers weren't great. He's dealt with injuries. Last year he was healthy, but his sack numbers weren't great. But you kind of dig deeper, look into the PFF numbers and some of those win rates and things like that. He was pretty good, and he's still got something left, even though he's in his 30s now. This is a guy that is going to be a big addition for this team, and you're going to hear that name on Sundays. Maybe not a ton, but you're going to hear it when you need to hear it on Sundays, spelling Myles Garrett and Olivier Vernon. Mary Kay, I'm just wondering what you think of that signing.
Well, I think he brings a solid rotational player to that end rotation behind Myles Garrett and Olivier Vernon. A lot of people wonder, what does this mean for Olivier Vernon, who's making $15.5 million next year, the highest salary on the team? I've been saying almost all offseason that I did not think that he would come back at that level. It's a lot of money to pay someone that has had the kind of production that he has had for the last couple of years. But I think they are sticking with him. From every indication that I get, they're sticking with Olivier Vernon. They believe he's a good complement to Myles Garrett. So I really believe that that Adrian Claiborne will come in, give those guys a blow when they need it at times, and provide them with that, and also some good veteran leadership. He's been around for a long time. He's 31 years old. He knows the ropes, and I think he can help a lot of young guys on that defense.
And Ellis, you look, there were some expensive options out there if they wanted to add an end, but they end up finding some really good value with a guy that, look, on a lot of one-year deals they've handed out, they give this guy a 2-year deal, even if it's not a lot of money.
Yeah, I'm fine with this. It remains on brand with what they've been doing with the defense. Like you said, there were some expensive options out there, and they've been going the other way, whether it's Claiborne, Billings, Sandejo, the other DBs they brought in on these some 2-year deals, like you said. for me, it makes sense. Potentially, some of these guys could be underrated. A BJ Goodson who could come in and do well in an increased role. For me, it's what this defense looks like in 2021 going forward. They're preparing for that. They're remaining flexible, and I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah, that remaining flexible is important, Scott, because there's some big money coming down the road. Miles Garrett, Denzel Ward, those are really expensive positions to pay. So you're adding good players and still maintaining, like Ellis said, that flexibility.
Yeah, and really this was a Browns team that I think looked at their roster, or that Andrew Berry looked at the roster and thought, we need to remake the depth on that defensive line. You know, the suspensions and injuries towards the end of last year really showed them that they really didn't have what it took to stop teams. There were a lot of teams that ran all over them down the stretch. You had guys like Brandon Bryant and Porter Gustin, Brian Cox. So bringing in someone like Billings and someone else like Clayton shows that they really want to upgrade that. And even if those guys don't become starters, if they're just rotational guys, or if they're just there for depth, at least you know that you have people there who can hopefully get the job done this year.
All right, there you have it. Our 4 favorite signings for the Browns. I don't know that there's another video out there you can watch that went kind of as deep on those 4 guys here in Cleveland. So check out cleveland.com/Browns for even more on those guys. And also to sign up for Football Insider, you get texts from all of us. You get an exclusive newsletter every day you can check out with stuff kind of like what you just heard, except, written out in a newsletter. It's $3.99 a month, but you can get 2 weeks free. That's at cleveland.com/Browns. Click on that blue banner at the top of the page.